So we're going to get started with what's your name, how old are you, and where are you from?
Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm 25 years old and I am in Michigan, the Mitten.
Perfect. And how did you become an Elvis fan?
So it kind of goes back really far. I'm trying to think of how I could pinpoint it, but I think I'm gonna say, so I grew up in a family that already loved Elvis. So I didn't get to like pick when I was gonna be a fan. I was just kind of like, it was, I volunteered, I guess. But it, it was just a natural thing, and it was cool because I had specifically, I was pinpoint it to my aunt. She was like the mega Elvis fan in the family. Everyone else kind of we listened to him, we liked him because of her, but he was like her guy. And so growing up, I would always hang out at her house, and her house was like an Elvis curated museum, basically, but in a classy way. It worked. And for me, that's all that I knew for when it came to Elvis. I thought that was normal. Like I didn't know other people's houses didn't have all that stuff in it like that. But she would always make sure she was teaching us about him and facts about him, and his music was always playing. Movies were always on. And so I kind of learned about him without having to ask, but I never was super like invested until I was about 8 or 9 years old. And his birthday for that year came around in January, and Turner Classic Movies was doing a marathon of all of his films from like beginning like of his filmography to the end. And I watched Love Me Tender, and I'm no stranger to westerns because my grandpa loves them. So I was like, I'll watch this. And it was the first one of his films I sat and watched like from the opening to the credits on my own. And at the end, I like was weeping, and I was like, I'm 9 years old. I was like, why am I crying, right? But I was so like compelled by his performance. And I remember after that, I called my aunt up and I was like, I get it now. Like, I want to be a fan too. And she was so excited and so happy. And that was kind of the start. So I guess since I was 9, but it's like a gray area.
All right, so what has surprised you most since becoming an Elvis fan?
I feel like seeing his impact, but like on like a mass level, but also like individuals. So I all I knew was once again like my family unit and how we felt about Elvis and my personal connection, but I didn't really have any other friends or people I knew that loved him. So I didn't know like how he impacted people on that small of a level. I knew like societal and music, obviously. But when I went to Graceland for the first time last year, I kind of like ran into a bunch of other fans, obviously, right, that are there, met them for the first time, and I met so many people from not even from America. Like they're from one was from Australia. And she had been a fan since she was little because of her dad. I met someone from England. But like the one thing I remember was when I was walking across down where the everyone writes on the wall, right? And there was this young woman there, and she was a solo traveler, I think, and she was reading all the little notes on there, and she was crying. And we were like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm just so like moved by this because when you read all the notes people are leaving, like you can see his individual impact with each person." And it made me want to cry too. I was just like, that's so true, you know? And being able to meet people and see how that's like become such a thing, especially since the films come out, it's so amazing to me. And I think that's like the most shocking thing.
What was it like to walk into his house for the first time after all these years of loving him?
It was it was jaw dropping. I was silent just because I was so trying to soak it all in and I wanted to stay present. Um, but it's crazy. Growing up, I would see photos that my aunt would show me. She had the miniature Graceland, the Christmas display that she'd put up on a mantle every year, and she would show me photos when she came back from trips and would say, "This is the TV room, and this is the jungle room, and this is why it looks like this, and this is what happened here." So it felt so like I was like, "Is it real?" You know? So when I finally got to go and step foot in there, just like smelling it too, like it has that smell of like your grandparents' house, you know, which I love because once again it adds to the hominess of it.
Yeah.
But it was just amazing. I got to go back because I did the UVIP tour, so I got to go back after I saw the museum part, and we were the last people in there,
Oh,
and I
nice.
could hear the house settling,
Oh,
and I just felt his spirit. It was so crazy. I was like, he's gonna walk down these stairs and greet me. It was so good.
yeah. That's so cool. So what was it like growing up and like then having your aunt there to do all of this Elvis stuff with though? Like did you guys watch movies together? Did you like what was it like growing up, as an Elvis fan?
So the aunt that I went with is my other like her sister, and so the aunt who was obsessed with Elvis passed away before I had a chance to get to go with her. But it was so it meant so much being able to go because the Elvis magic thing kind of happened where I happened to go on the anniversary of her passing.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
having my mom there and my other aunt, it was just so amazing to feel her presence and Elvis's presence while I was there. Um, but yeah, and like growing up listening to like Elvis and watching his movies, like he was just always a part of, I always say he's an extended family member in a weird way. I know that sounds so weird,
No, not
but yeah, he just did. Like my aunt and I would bake cookies around Christmas time. And she'd be like, we're playing Elvis Christmas music. And it wasn't a question, it was a statement. Like, that's what we're doing, right? All of that. Like, her basement would have like cardboard cutouts of him, like the 68 special. So I knew I was like, that's Elvis. So he's just always been there. So I think in a way, he's like a warming presence. And it was great to kind of have that growing up. So he reminds me of my childhood too in a lot of ways.
yeah.
So
Yeah. And so I think that's awesome too. I mean, I came in through the movie. And so like I've never seen a fandom like this either, whether when I was like Backstreet Boys back in the day and like all that
yeah,
stuff. But this is totally different because I don't know. I have a lot of theories as to why it's different. But what do you think it is about Elvis that, people gravitate towards?
I feel like it's hard to like point to because there's so many like facets to him that's so interesting, and I feel like one he just has such an interesting like life story, but like it has to be. I feel like he was like in the film in the opening when you see in the like when he's baptized almost and anointed by like that gospel choir. I don't know. I just feel like he was meant for like the time he was meant for on earth. And I think for some reason it's just like he was given that special uh magnetism that's just really like impacts people. It doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter like the time that we're living in. And I think it comes out through his voice, through the stories he told, through the songs he sang, and the story he lived, and the mark he left.
What do you think is the most important thing that non-Elvis fans should know about Elvis?
I feel like two things, if I can say two things.
Which
Um,
one?
okay. So the first would be I feel like how generous he was because it's not often talked about, I feel like, if you're not invested in him. Like how he just gave away, he was like, hey, do you need a car? Here's a car. Like, you need a house? Here, I bought you a house. Like, and he was so giving to the point where he kind of went bankrupt almost. And I'm like, I don't think people know that. And he didn't do it for the wrong reasons either. He was just so humble in that way and he knew what it was like to struggle. Um, and the way he just interacted with the fans, just yeah, like that, I think. But the most important is I think his health ailments and things. Just people don't they only see him as like the caricature, and almost like a joke in some ways. And I think if more people that were not fans kind of did the research or knew about the things he struggled with behind closed doors when it comes to like what led to his passing, I don't know, they just would understand him more as like the man he was instead of like the big figure and icon. That's something I've always wished.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing to think about like how he was on stage, that last year with like all of the different things that were going on with his body. Like it's amazing he could go up there and still sing like he could. And
yeah.
it's amazing to think about. So my last question for you is what does it mean to be an Elvis fan to you today?
So I feel like for me, being an Elvis fan today means family and it means connection, I think. Um he like connects me to my past, my present, and my future is kind of like how I like to say. And he also feels like a bridge to like a heavenly bridge to people passed on, like my aunt who passed away.
Mhm.
Um, and I think whenever I listen to his music, it takes me back to not just my childhood, but just like recent memories too, like when I just visited Memphis, or I can think of when I want to play the music in other important milestones in my future. And um, I mean, I had an Elvis ETA artist at my high school graduation, and everyone thought that I was crazy. Everyone was
I
like, "Who?
love it.
What is this?"
I love it.
If it happened now, it would have been like amazing, I'm sure. But like back then, I was the weird one. But but
Love it.
like it's just he's always been there. So I just feel like yeah, being an Elvis fan to me is family, it's connection, and it's home.
Yeah.
So
Well, I love that. Isabel, thank you so much for talking to me today. I think this is fantastic, and especially the connection with your family and like just it sounds so Elvis sounds so personal to you. And so I appreciate you sharing that with everybody watching. So thank you so much.
yeah, thank you for letting me share.